Thank you. Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Wyden, and members of the committee, I appreciate you taking the time today for this hearing. Last Wednesday, President Trump declared a national emergency in response to the large and persistent trade deficit that has built up in recent years. This deficit is driven in part by non-reciprocal tariffs, trading barriers, and other economic policies pursued by our foreign trading partners. The situation is urgent. President Trump imposed tariffs to address this emergency, and these measures are aimed squarely at achieving reciprocity and reducing our massive trade deficit to reshore production in the United States. This national emergency declaration and tariff action is the most significant change in U.S. trade policy since we allowed China to join the World Trade Organization. The American working class, in particular, has suffered concentrated losses from the so-called China shock and other adverse effects of past trade policy and the conditions that give rise to this massive trade deficit. You've heard some of these numbers before. The United States has lost 5 million manufacturing jobs and 90,000 factories since 1994. President Biden left with a $1.2 trillion trade deficit in goods, the largest of any country in the history of the world. The United States' share of world manufacturing output declined from 2001 to last year. In the fourth quarter of 2024, U.S. manufacturing as a share of gross domestic product was the lowest it had been in 20 years. During COVID, we were unable to procure semiconductors to build our cars or materials for pharmaceuticals and personal protective equipment. During World War II, we built nearly 9,000 ships. Last year, the United States built only 3 ocean-going vessels. Our agricultural trade balance, which historically resulted in trade surpluses for our farmers, was in deficit the last 2 years of the Biden administration and likely will take some time to recover. These are all serious indicators of an economic and national security emergency, and we can't ignore it. One important driver of these negative trends has been unfair, unbalanced, and non-reciprocal trade. This includes the effect of higher tariffs imposed by other countries on the United States, the effect of non-tariff measures that promote other countries' exports and obstruct U.S. exports, and other foreign economic policies favoring overproduction and degrading America's manufacturing capacity. And the lack of reciprocity is an important driver of our global trade deficit and with particular countries. So it's common sense to focus on these indicators. For example, the European Union can sell us all the shellfish they want, but the EU bans shellfish from 48 states. The result is a trade deficit in shellfish with the EU. We only charge a 2.5% tariff on ethanol, but Brazil charges us an 18% tariff. The result? We have a large trade deficit in ethanol with Brazil. Our average tariff on agricultural goods is 5%, but India's average tariff is 39%. You understand the trend here. Our trade deficit, driven by these non-reciprocal conditions, is a manifestation of the loss of the nation's ability to make, to grow, to build. And the president recognizes the urgency of the moment. On the first day of his second term, President Trump issued a comprehensive memorandum setting out his trade policy directive. And over the past 10 weeks, he has executed on nearly all of these priorities. He has tightened tariffs on steel and aluminum. He's imposed new measures on auto and auto parts not made in the United States. And on April 2nd, the president declared the national emergency that we've discussed. And so the president has imposed a reciprocal tariff along with a global baseline tariff to achieve reciprocity with other countries and to drive the dangerous deficit down. And the president's strategy is already bearing fruit. Over the past few weeks, a planned layoff for an auto production shift in Tennessee has been suspended. Another automaker is hiring additional employees and expanding overtime to increase auto production in Indiana. Companies have announced $4 trillion in new investment in the United States. Nearly 50 countries have approached me personally to discuss the president's new policy and explore how to achieve reciprocity, and they've spoken with many members of the administration. Several of these countries, such as Argentina, Vietnam, India, and Israel, have suggested that they will reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers in line with the president's policy. And these obviously are welcome moves. Our large and persistent trade deficit has been over 30 years in the making, and it will not be resolved overnight, but all of this is in the right direction, particularly as we start to negotiate with these countries. We must move away from an economy that's based solely on government spending and the financial sector, and we must become an economy based on producing real goods and services that provide jobs for working class and middle class Americans in their communities. This adjustment may be challenging at times, and in a moment of drastic overdue change, I'm confident, I'm certain that the American people can rise to the challenge as they've done before. I appreciate this committee's interest in President Trump's trade agenda. I'm glad we're talking about this. That's created debate. And we may not agree on everything, but I know that you want to do what's best for America. So does the president, and so do I, and we'll collaborate together on this. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to our conversation.